much for inviting us. I will be here today with Elaine Reynoso, who's a dear friend and colleague, and we will be taking you through our workshop on financial literacy, which is your path to freedom. So important these days with COVID-19 happening. So I'd like to take a little second to do a little bit of housekeeping, also introduce myself, and Elaine will introduce herself. So from my point of view, my name is Gaia Calcaterra, and I am definitely not an accountant or a financial planner, but I am an entrepreneur. I love business. I love anything business related. I've run multiple businesses. And a little bit about me, I have lived in a number of different countries. I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa. That explains my accent. And both of my parents are Italian. So I've lived in Italy, I've lived in China, I've lived in Australia. And I recently came here, well, not recently, I've been in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is where I call my home for the last 12 years. It's probably almost 13 by now. From an education standpoint, I have a bit of a mixed bag. I have a degree in fine arts, which I got in Florence, Italy, and then more recently a master's in business management from Nova University here in South Florida. From a business perspective, I've been involved in just about everything and anything, and it's constantly evolving and changing. I love the challenge of business. I love anything business related. And currently I have a number of vacation rental properties. I do short-term private loans. I do property rehabs. I recently started an e-commerce business, a private label Amazon business at the beginning of the pandemic, funnily enough, which is actually going really well and I'm very passionate about. And actually we'll be doing a giveaway from it at the end of this, so please stay with us till the end. And then from a non-for-profit perspective, I have two projects which are very near and dear to my heart. And that is, one is the Hope Floats project, which goes to benefit Tomorrow's Rainbow here in South Florida. And it helps children go through the grieving process for children who've typically lost both parents or a parent and are going through the grief process by themselves. And then a second project, which is even more near and dear to my heart, which is the Gratitude Project, started 6 years ago. And we were able to raise $350,000 and build a care center in South Africa for children of child-headed households. So yes, absolutely love those two projects, very dedicated to them. And then from a hobby point of view, love traveling. It's been a little bit limited at the moment. And I'm an avid Toastmaster, which is where I met Eileen initially. And so that's all about public speaking. So that's a little bit about me. And I wanted to turn it over to Elaine to introduce herself to you.
Thank you, Gaia, and thank you so much, Eileen, for having us on today. My name is Elaine Reynoso. I'm a wealth consciousness coach, a real estate agent, and the founder of the Financial Freedom Workshop. I want to share a little bit about my personal history first. I'm the oldest of the first generation born in the United States. I learned English at the age of 5. My mom was young, so we were raised in my grandparents' house, and my grandfather worked in a factory just outside of New York City to provide for the family. He dreamed that I'd go to college and get a good job, and so I did. At the University of Massachusetts Amherst, I majored in finance and banking and was the first woman to graduate university in my family. I climbed the corporate ladder, working for some of the Fortune 500 best companies, including IBM, Western Union, Greenpoint Bank, and Fremont Investments, to name a few. Until I realized that that American dream wasn't the guarantee or satisfaction that it promised. I'm now living the real dream as an entrepreneur. I help people buy and sell their dream homes, that condo on the beach, and investment properties. But more rewarding than that, I absolutely love sharing the financial steps that got me where I am today, because I wouldn't be here if I hadn't lived my financial freedom plan and workshop. I'll share a little bit more about that later, but I have firsthand knowledge of how getting your financial life together can alleviate an immense amount of stress and shift our lives into creator mode instead of survivor mode. I'm going to pass it back to Gaia to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you, Elaine. So again, we are very excited, and it's an honor and a privilege to be with all of you here today. And thank you, Arlene, for inviting us again. And for those of you who are new on this workshop, a little bit about how this workshop came to be. A couple of weeks ago, or almost a couple of months ago, Arlene had organized a fantastic conference with 5 incredible speakers called Women Empowering Women for Excellence. And it's posted on YouTube, and I'm sure Arlene can provide the link. And we had sort of 20 minutes to speak, and I spoke about the 10 rules about financial literacy and independence that I developed over the years. And there were a lot of questions, and so Arlene very kindly invited me back to speak again for a full hour. And I've invited my dear friend and colleague Elaine, who is brilliant at financial planning and holds an excellent workshop on it. So we're looking forward to spending the hour with you today and giving you as much as possible information-wise, and giving you tips and rules and suggestions that you can implement almost immediately that will lead to financial independence and basically your path to freedom. So it's so important at the moment to, with COVID going on, to have a financial freedom and a specific path and some type of financial stability. And we're going to look at a couple of things. We're going to help you create this path today. We are going to help you assess exactly where you are and take a look at exactly where you are and where you stand financially, and also help remove some of the fear that you have around it, because I get that for some of you it can be very, very fearful at the moment. And then we've created a set of actionable steps that you can start implementing today, like very, very simple ones, and that are easy to implement and okay for everyone to do. And then we're going to look at helping you create a financial future that is really inspiring and having an inspiring plan, as opposed to what Elaine and I call financial dieting, because who wants to do financial dieting? No thanks. So before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. Arlene is the host of this webinar. So if you do have questions or comments or challenges with Zoom, please feel free to direct questions directly to her. If you could have a pen and piece of paper handy, that would be very helpful, because Elaine's going to take us through just some very short, simple exercises that I'm sure will be very, very helpful to you. And then as far as questions go, if you could type them in the chat as we go along. We have dedicated 10 to 15 minutes at the end, and we're going to do everything possible to end on time today and to be mindful of your time. And also we're going to be having a giveaway. So right at the very end of our Q&A, Arlene will be picking a person's name randomly, and you will get to go on the Life of Gaia website, pick any product that you like, and we will send it to you as the prize. So very, very excited about that. Now, financial literacy can be a little bit dry and boring, but Elaine and I are going to do absolutely everything to have this be interactive and fun and helpful to you. And so we have quite a lot to get through in an hour. So let's get started. Now, agenda-wise today, we're going to go through financial literacy and why it's so important. Then Elaine is going to take us through just some key financial aspects and terms in financial literacy, so that everyone has a good understanding of what they are. Then we're going to go through, we've selected 4 main areas of interest, okay, the ones that we thought would be the most impactful and helpful in an hour. And then we've broken it down into 3 tips for each area. And the 3 tips are: 1 is about assessing the situation that you're in, 2 is about creating an actionable plan, and the 3rd tip will be an actionable step. So I encourage you to take notes and see how these tips can work for you. So the main areas that we're going to go through, the 4 main areas, are: we're going to look at your spending habits and creating a savings plan. We are going to look at, Elaine is going to take us through budgeting and assets and understanding the different types of asset classes. And then Elaine is going to take us through interest rates and credit and debt cycles and how important those are. And then lastly, I will take you through investing, creating multiple streams of income, passive income, and your own education. And then last, we're going to leave about 10 minutes for all your questions and the giveaway. All right, so let's get started. So financial literacy and your path to financial freedom. Now, having financial literacy and achieving independence is so important today. And it's really the result of, understanding key financial aspects and making as many right choices as possible for the long term. So in essence, it's about understanding things like budgeting, having emergency savings plans, interest rates, and investing in the stock market. Now, I think you would agree that we are in very, very challenging times at the moment with COVID. There's job losses, there's uncertainty all around us. So now more than ever, it's become crucial to be financially independent and secure. But unfortunately, this topic or this field that is so important and makes such a difference in your life is really not ever taught to us at schools, which it should be. And actually, to compound things and make matters worse, we inherit our money story from our parents and a money mindset that goes with it. And so we have it brought down from generation to generation, and we typically adopt the money mindset that our parents had. And I think, Elaine, you had quite an interesting story about money and mindset and all of that. And so I'd like to hand it over to you.
I do, thank you. So for me, after 10 very successful years in the finance industry, holding on tightly to what I thought was financial stability, I had several years of the market crashing, corporate restructures, and layoffs shatter that illusion. The last was in 2012. It was a few days before a very well-deserved vacation to Bali with my guy at the time, and my company asked me to cancel my trip. They were restructuring once again and needed me to analyze the quarterly financial reports in both the old and new structure. The following week, I was let go from my job. I cried, really. With student loans, credit card debt, a nice car, an expensive apartment on the beach, I quickly saw myself broke and struggling to survive. I was in a really big place of fear. And of course, the guy at the time dumped me. But I was really hating myself because I did what I thought was right. Work commitments come before fun, I thought, right? With 2 weeks severance pay and zero in the bank, I felt my world crashing down on me. In a moment of despair and tears, the universe said, sink or swim, Elaine. Something shifted within me in that moment, and I created a plan. I was having lunch with every business professional I never had time for before. I consciously made a choice. I chose not to return to corporate America. I chose to believe in me, my skills, my knowledge, my connections, and it worked. I spent a few years in the world of freelance public relations, marketing, and event production, and then I got a real estate license. That plan is my financial freedom plan that had me master my money situation. I paid off more than $40,000 in credit card and student loans. I saved enough money to live debt-free for a few years. I traveled the world for 6 months working on projects that I absolutely loved. I created a business with zero income at the time, and I still haven't gotten a real job. So as you can see, I had some limiting beliefs that I had to overcome. So what is a limiting belief? A limiting belief is anything you believe to be true that holds you back in some way. It limits you. So where do they come from? Consider, how did you learn to speak the way you did? Your accent, the pronunciation of words, that you're supposed to say please and thank you and share with your siblings. As Gaia said, we inherit our money mindset from our parents. Our society and culture program us at an early age to be a specific way. So do you see it? Do you see your family constantly saying things like, money doesn't grow on trees, life is a struggle, things are hard, it's a hard knock life. There's a song about it, right? So did you hear growing up things like poor starving artist? Oh, you can't make it. Who do you think you are? Right. If that's the programming that you got in your childhood, 95% of the times you're going to sabotage yourself, because it's a fact that 95% of the times we operate from our subconscious mind. We're not thinking, we're just being. So how do we discover our own limiting beliefs that are running in the background? For me, in my story, I never, ever at that point thought that I would ever be an entrepreneur, a sales rep, 100% commission. I was immensely afraid of the lack of stability. I can't survive without a stable job. That's what I said to myself. So I'm going to give you a sentence. Grab a pen. I'm going to write this down. We're going to start looking at your limiting beliefs. So, I'd love to have more money, but go ahead and fill in the blank. I'd love to have more money, but. You can use but to expose your limiting beliefs in any situation. The example that I want to share, and we'll come back to this at the end actually, is I'd love to have more money, but I'm just not good with money. So take a second to think about yours. We're going to come back to this exercise at the end of the presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Gaia to talk about financial literacy and independence.
Thanks, Elaine, for sharing that. And yes, very, very simple exercise. And to repeat it again, it's just one simple sentence. I would like to have more money, but, and then fill in the blanks. And then we'll revisit it right at the end of the talk. Very, very important to understand your limiting beliefs and where they're coming from. So while you guys are writing that down, and if some of you would like to share it in the chat, please feel free to do so. Eileen will be reading all of them. And I'm going to get us started on a couple of points, actually 6 points, on why financial literacy is so important and gaining financial independence. The first one is job security, okay? I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but job security is really a fallacy. And all you have to do to see this and understand this is pick up any newspaper or turn on the television and watch the news station to see that job losses and job cuts are rampant and across the board at the moment. There is no such thing as job security. The future of work is uncertain, and it always will be, okay? And it's not just the current economic situation, but we have things like artificial intelligence starting to take over jobs by the thousands and, you know, starting to replace people in the workplace. And so now more than ever, it's become crucial to be financially independent and free. Number two, why it's so important is that stuff happens, unfortunately. And I have quite a sort of not so great statistic at the moment that's quite staggering. And it's that 70% of Americans do not have $1,000 in savings in case of an emergency, right? That's 70% of the US population does not have $1,000 in savings in case of an emergency. So again, financial independence, creating that stability, having an emergency fund, absolutely fundamental at the moment. Reason number three why it's so important. At the beginning, I explained to you that I'd lived in a number of different countries, and there was a reason for that, is that you cannot always rely on governments for help, all right? It's amazing when it does come, you know, we've all been through applying for PPP loans and EIDL loans and Social Security and unemployment, and it's all wonderful when it does happen. But I've lived in countries where that was never even an option. And so learning to stand on your own 2 feet and, you know, getting government help as a bonus if it does show up is wonderful. But, you know, be sure that you can stand on your own 2 feet and be completely independent in case anything happens. Number four reason why it's so important is another unfortunate one, but it's being female. And gender pay inequality, unfortunately, is rampant in the workplace at the moment. And there is an up to 40% pay gap between genders at the moment. Being financially independent and secure completely eliminates that. Reason number five why financial freedom is so important is relationships. Now, you might happen to be in a stable relationship. You may be, you know, one of the stay-at-home partners supported by your partner, which is wonderful. You may be single. You may be a single parent. There's a number of different relationships that you may or may not be in, but you never ever know what's going to happen. And so I encourage you to always, regardless of the situation, create a degree of financial independence for yourself in case something happens. And as far as relationship goes, another not so great statistic is that 90% of abusive relationships also exercise some form of financial control. That's 90% of abusive relationships exercise some form of financial control. So again, so important to make sure that you have even a little bit of savings, an emergency fund, some kind of plan that you can put together to help. And then the last one is just general business and success in life. Having financial literacy and independence and some path to financial freedom, whether you are an employee, fully employed, or you're a business owner or freelancer, it doesn't matter. All of these things are helpful in every single case. So whether you are negotiating the price of your art as an artist, or you are negotiating a new business contract for your company, or you simply negotiating a salary, these are all tools and information that you simply cannot do without. So to give you a little bit of information around financial literacy and the components of it, Elaine is going to walk you through a couple of the most important ones and just give you a quick, brief explanation, and then we'll fold it out and get into it into more depth. Over to you, Elaine.
Thank you. This is just a brief explanation because we're going to go into more depth into these later in the process. So components of financial literacy, right? Part one, savings and spending habits. Do you know what you need, what you want? Like, do you know how much you're spending, how much you're saving? Where is that money going? We're going to also look at your assets. Assets are anything that you have of value. There are appreciating assets and depreciating assets. So what are you spending your money on? Things that make more money for you or things that make less money for you? We're going to look at budgets and cash flow plans, right? Do you know where your money's going every single month? How much money's coming in? How much money's going out? Interest rates. Are you aware of how much interest you're paying on those credit cards or store cards? Do you really know the true cost of money, of borrowing money, of credit cards? Your credit score. We're going to look at using credit to your advantage, why bad credit can often make things more expensive for you. We're going to look at multiple streams of income, in case something happens with your job, as we already explained. We're going to look at investing and having money work for you. We're going to look at education in yourself, which is your biggest investment ever because it increases your value as a human being and your potential to earn more money. I'm going to turn it over to Gaia.
Thank you so much, Elaine. So as I mentioned, Elaine and I are going to today walk you through 4 of the main areas of financial literacy that we identified, and we're going to take you through 3 tips for each one. And again, the first tip is going to be about assessing the current situation and what you can do in the current situation. Tip number 2 is going to be about creating some kind of actionable plan in that area. And then number 3 is actually putting that plan into action and implementing it. And again, these are financial tips and suggestions that we've developed over the years that have created a degree of financial independence for myself and Elaine too. So let's get started. The first area that we're going to look at is that of spending habits and savings. All right. So important because you cannot create savings without strong spending habits. All right. So tip number 1, like every time that I go to purchase something or buy something, I always ask myself a series of questions before I buy it. Okay. So tip number 1 is ask yourself the questions. And the questions that I ask myself are these. Number 1, do I want or do I need that item? All right. There's a very big difference between wants and needs. All right. Want is something, it might be fashionable. It might be something that, a friend purchased. So there's a number of reasons, but it's an unnecessary item. Okay. And so I tend to spend money on needs. Like needs are more sort of survival related, food, gas, things that you need on a day-to-day basis to survive. Then the second question I ask myself is, will this item increase my income or decrease my income? So if the answer is increase my income, I will purchase it. If it's decreasing my income, I will not purchase it. So for example, you might be looking at a suit for a job interview. Actually, that will increase my income in the long term. So I would make that purchase. All right. If it was, I don't know, another pair of heels or whatever that isn't really necessary, I would not buy that purchase. Then question number 3 is, can I pay cash for the item? And if I cannot pay cash for the item, I will typically not purchase it. And this obviously excludes large purchases such as real estate or vehicles or things like that. But for the rest, if I do not have the cash available to buy it, I typically will not. So basically, anything that's related to clothing, fashion, cars, that whole thing of keeping up with the Joneses and all of that is not going to help you create a solid financial plan where you can have money working for you. It goes to all sort of frivolous stuff that loses value almost immediately. I mean, from a fashion point of view, I have a very limited, simple wardrobe. People laugh because I tell them, I had mentioned this to Arlene before, and she's nodding her head right now because I'm wearing the exact same shirt in the last time we spoke. And so, Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg basically have like 7 pairs of jeans and 7 t-shirts, and they wear one every day. And to them, it takes them away from getting distracted about picking clothes and actually focusing on important things like creating and design and business and all of that. So I subscribe to the Mark Zuckerberg and Steve Jobs school of fashion. And also to be mindful of how, the media tends to, create things that make you buy. There's a very important documentary, which I'd also mentioned in the last talk. It's called The True Cost. And, they explain how the fashion industry has taken us from 4 seasons of fashion per year to 52 seasons a year to ensure that the second you buy clothes, they've already pretty much gone out of fashion. So again, it's none of the stuff that you need. It takes away from savings. It takes away from having money work for you. Too many shoes, too many clothes, all unnecessary, right?
Right, completely. Actually, there's an episode of Sex and the City where Carrie, she's been renting this apartment for decades and it is up for sale, but she doesn't have any money to put a down payment. So her friend Charlotte comes over to her place to help her brainstorm what are they going to do. And Charlotte walks into Carrie's closet and she's like, oh my God, there must be $30,000 worth of shoes in your closet. This is your down payment for your apartment. What are you doing? So don't be a Carrie. Stick to classic fashion like Gaia. Okay, maybe I should have a white shirt too. I don't know.
No, that's a brilliant example. It's perfect. Yeah, so watch out those shoes. So tip number 2 in this area is cutting spending helps you save. All right. So do you actually save anything at all? Like, are you a person who puts money aside or not? And to start looking at that. And tip number 2 is about starting to understand where your money is going and put together a plan to understand exactly what your spending habits are and what you spend on a monthly basis. Now, Elaine suggested and showed me 2 amazing apps that are super easy to use. One is called For Receipt. It's an app, and the other one is Shoebox. Now, both of these, all you have to do is snap a picture and create categories, and it will itemize everything that you spend and sort of give you a running report on what you're spending. So very, very quick, clear, and easy to see where your spending habits are, where your funds are going, like what you can cut back on. And then while you're doing that, I know this is probably one of the most terrifying things for some people at the moment, is for at least 1 month to check your bank balance every single day. Okay. I know sometimes it's scary to look at your bank balance, but it's the first step into really understanding where you are and addressing all of that. So, you take something simple like spending, $5 or $10 on food or coffee or whatever every day. It adds up pretty quickly, because over a month it's $150, and over a year it's $1,800. And so really, like, what else could you be spending that $1,800 on per year, as a small example? Because really we want our money to work for us as opposed to the other way around. Then tip number 3, which is an actionable item that you can do immediately, is automate your savings. Okay, there are quick and easy apps, such as Acorn, for example, which will sort of tally up to the nearest dollar amount what you, the cents in between what you have spent and the dollar amount, and put it directly into a savings account. I promise you won't even notice that it's gone, and you will start a savings account that starts to build up very, very quickly. So highly recommend that. And also to create an emergency fund for, rainy days if you get laid off. And Elaine was telling me about an interesting sort of golden rule to use, that it used to be you should have 2 months of expenses saved. That has now become 6 months of expenses saved. So 6 months of expenses saved are what you should have as a cushion in the background. So I've taken you through savings and spending, and I'm going to turn it over to Elaine, who's going to walk us through budgeting and assets.
Thank you, Gaia. So we're going to dive deeper into those financial components. So budgeting versus assets. Tip number 1 is knowing the difference between a budget and a cash flow plan. Okay, so a budget is, I kind of consider it a financial diet, right? We got to like cut our budget and save money. We got to set these goals and stick to them. We can only spend $100 on Starbucks this month. I'm kidding, no Starbucks, forget that. But I prefer to use the word a cash flow plan, right? It sounds easier. There's a little bit more liberation in there. A diet is restrictive, right? We don't want that. We don't want to rebel against ourselves. With a cash flow plan, you want to start considering yourself like a business. The money flows in and it flows out. Where is it going? What are you doing with it? Let's see. So you're going to manage your funds in a particular way that is going to allow you to live your life while still having a savings plan. You want to monitor your cash flow plan for the first 30 days every day, and then every single month go through and figure out, did I make enough money? What did I spend it on? And did I meet my goals? Tip 2, embrace a value-based spending. Okay, so value-based spending, what does that mean? We're going to assign a value to what we're spending on. Does it increase your human value, your health, or your productivity in some way? An example of that is, well, Gaia talked all about fashion, but we're going to go a little bit deeper. Education, right? That is something that's going to increase your value as a human being and your potential to earn. A gym membership, that's going to increase your health, right? Now, you don't need to be going to that $300 a month gym, but you can go to, I don't know, $50 a month gym, right? So you want to evaluate things. And then the other side of that is things that destroy value. So those would be overdraft fees in your bank or credit card, right? Purchasing cigarettes, credit card interest rates, like the actual interest that you're paying. The next place to look is whether your assets, which are things that are of value that you own, are appreciating or depreciating. So does it bring your value up? Like, does the value of that item go up or down? Examples of that is your car, right? The second you buy that car, it loses value when you get off the lot. And every single year, it's going to depreciate in value, okay? If you buy a house, hopefully, if you buy it in the right economy and in the right market, as long as you own it, it is going to increase in value. So you want to take a look at what that looks like. Another item that goes down is home furniture. Don't overspend on your home furniture, because the longer you keep that, the longer you use it, the wear and tear is going to lose value. Tip number 3, how to start your financial plan. So I love a book called Secrets of a Millionaire Mind. I actually attended the Millionaire Mind Intensive with T. Harv Eker. Okay, and he has a money management system that I think is amazing. So in his system, 55% of your income automatically goes to your necessities. So those would be your bills, your mortgage, your rent payment, your utilities, groceries. Notice I didn't say food, groceries, and basic clothing, right? That's classic fashion over here. 10% of your income is going to go to savings. And we're going to separate that into two categories. The emergency fund that Gaia talked about, right? That is your kind of like, oh, shoot, my car broke, or, I lost my job, or the kid needs braces. I don't know, something. Well, braces will be in the other category, actually. The second category is your long-term savings, right? So the 10% savings is 5% to emergency fund, 5% to long-term savings. And those are big ticket items like braces, like a house payment, or a house down payment, I should say, for saving up for that vacation that you want. 10% of your income should go to your education account. That is a must, right? That is books, workshops, trainings, coaching, anything that is going to increase your value and potential to earn more money in the future. Next is 10% is going to go to your financial freedom account. So what is that? That is money that you never actually spend. That is money that you invest. So you would use that money to make more money. In other words, you're going to use that money to invest in the stock market. You're going to use that money to buy that investment property. It's going to continue to generate more money for you. The next account is your play account. Now, this is a must, because I told you, this is not a diet. We're not restricting ourselves. 10% of your income goes to playing, movies, happy hour. You are required to spend this money every single month. This will keep your inner self happy, okay? And the final category is the give account. 5% of your money should be given away, tethering, right? When we feel charitable, we feel confident. We receive while we're giving, right? And if you can't give money, that's fine. Give of your time. When you feel abundant, when you feel good about yourself, you're the best version of yourself. And that automatically is going to attract more opportunity towards you, okay? So once you understand where your money is going, then you can start to have a little bit of peace of mind and freedom around it. Next, we're going to talk about interest rates and debt cycles. So interest rates are what you spend, like how much money are you actually spending to use that credit card, okay? I want to dive into debt cycle first up. So a debt cycle is, how long does it take from the time that you're borrowing that money on your credit card till you have to pay it back? You want to know when you actually have to pay it back. It makes sense to know that if your credit cards are due on the 25th of, or I should say on the 5th of the month, if you get 2 paychecks a month, one on the 1st and one on the 15th, but your first paycheck has to go towards your mortgage or your rent and all your utilities, do you even have money to pay your credit card on the 5th? You might want to consider moving that due date to the second pay cycle after the 15th of the month, where you might actually have money to pay that. So tip number 1 is know how much interest you are paying on each card. A typical credit card is between 14 to 25%. Those store cards, Ross, TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Macy's, those are 25 to 28% interest, right? So what does that mean? For every $100 you spend, you are paying $25 to them to borrow that money. So big tip, ladies, red flag when you see those 20% off sales, you know why? Because most of the times, if you put it on their card, you get 20% off. However, you're paying 20% interest. So in reality, you are actually paying the full price plus 5% interest. Do you see it there? Do you see the math? So be mindful, do the math, make sure that you're going to pay off your credit card at the end of the month so you don't pay that interest to actually get that savings. And don't ever use your credit card for groceries or gas, because that's something that you consume instantaneously. So you're paying interest on something that you've already consumed the second you bought it or that week, right? You also, when we look at credit, you want to maintain a good credit score because it means the difference between how much you actually pay. So if someone with bad credit walked into the car dealership and someone with good credit walked in, the person with bad credit is going to get a higher payment because their interest is going to be higher. They're going to pay more money for the same car if you bought the identical same car, okay? You want to use your credit to your advantage, okay? Always. So what does that mean? Pay off your credit cards as soon as you use them. I mean, as soon as the bill comes in at the end of the month, okay? Build extra credit so that you can qualify for lower payments on things. Tip number 2 is creating a plan. So how do you pay off your debt? There's 2 methods, but first and most importantly, you want to look at which one has the highest interest rate and which one has the highest balance or the lowest balance. I tell people first pay the lowest balance because it makes you feel confident that you've accomplished something and that you can do better. You can keep going. You're like, oh, this is working. So then you're going to target the card with the highest interest rate. And so that card that you paid off with the lowest balance, take that money, add that to your minimum payment over here, and then you start paying down this card. And once you've paid that second card down, now you take all the money you've been paying towards the second card, plus whatever you were paying the other cards, and you're going to add it to card number 3. And you're going to keep doing that. That's called the snowball effect. Okay. Really important. Some people think that they should consolidate their debt and pay off with this big loan. I'm going to tell you two reasons. So first of all, it is not a good idea if you have decent credit to consolidate, because the only time, the way that they consolidate is they tell you to stop making your payments, which ruins your credit score, so that that company can then consolidate it all into one big lump loan and you pay it down, right? So if you have decent credit, do not do that. It'll destroy your credit. Now, if you already have bad credit, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. It'll help save you later on. Tip number 3, commit to 3 actionable steps per week. So what are actionable steps? If you can't pay cash, don't buy it, right? Call your credit card companies and request a lower interest rate. You never know unless you try, and a lot of times they'll do it. So that's a good one. Pay your credit card in full at the end of every single month. This way you pay 0 interest. And we're repeating this because it's super important. It also helps you build up your credit score because you're utilizing your credit, but you're not owing, you're not losing anything. Now that you've saved, and now we can start talking about how to use your money to make more money. I'm going to turn it over to Gaia to talk about investing.
Thank you, Elaine. Yes, so important. Now that we've spent all this time like saving and budgeting and purchasing the right assets and creating emergency funds, it's really time to start having that money work for us and start creating investments, multiple streams of income, and most importantly, education. So very quickly, 3 tips around that. Education, first and foremost. Invest in yourself every single time. You are your biggest investment. And with regard to other investments, take the time to educate yourself, understand what investments are available, understand what they're all about. And please don't fall for these, get rich quick schemes where they hold up a check that, this person made $50,000 by investing in this property. I assure you, any stream of income has a degree of work related to it, okay? Some of them easier than others, but unless you're a trust fund baby, there's some degree of work. There's no such thing as completely passive income. So take the time to invest in your education, spend money on it. Even if you don't have money, there are tons of free resources out there. We've actually created a PDF sheet with all the links that we've mentioned so far and to all the free resources out there that are available. So for example, there's something like Coursera, which is online education, tons of different university classes from all over the world, including Harvard, MIT, all completely free of charge. Broward College currently has something called Broward Up, completely free classes to help get other skills for job-related skills. The Broward Library, there's an app called Libby that you can download, and you have access to thousands, hundreds of thousands of free audio books and digital books. And people always ask, well, I don't have time to do it. I assure you, if you have time to scroll through social media or watch television, you have time to further your education. Very important. Tip number 2, start creating multiple streams of income. Doesn't matter if you have a great job or a great business, if it's secure. I encourage you to always create multiple streams of income, no matter how small. So you might think I don't have, and I encourage you to take a little bit of time right now and just write down 3 potential sources of income that you could come up with. It could be renting a room in your house, doubling up on babysitting, investing in the stock market, teaching kids English online, anything that will create a backup source of income. And then lastly, tip number 3 is to start having your money work for you. Once you've created these multiple streams of income and you have created a savings account, you can then start adding more and more of them and find ways to automate them and make them simpler and easy to handle. And once you start generating this income, now is the time to start investing in things like the stock market, other businesses, real estate, any number of vehicles that will start having your money work for you instead of the other way around. So now I know that it's been a lot of information and we've come full circle. We wanted to leave a couple of minutes for questions and answers. And before we do that, Elaine is quickly going to complete the exercise that we started off with.
Okay, so the example that we had was, or the sentence was, I'd love to have more money, but, okay? So take a look at what you wrote down. The example I said was, I'd love to have more money, but I'm just not good with money, okay? So we're going to take a look at that statement. We're going to find a way to override that original limiting belief by turning the sentence around, right? How do you turn what you wrote down into an empowering belief? So I'd love to have more money, but I am just not good with money. So first, let's think it through. This assumes that you can't learn anything new, but we know we just shared a whole bunch of really awesome information with you, and some of that might be new information. So we're going to replace that statement with, I learn and use knowledge about money every single day. I learn and use knowledge about money every day. You want to repeat this as often as possible every day until you start to believe it. When you're jogging, when you're relaxing, just keep repeating it. If you want more information on any of this stuff, if you're interested on financial literacy, I'm going to be running a course in January, my Financial Freedom Workshop. And there's a discount code for you in the one pager that Arlene is going to share with you. So you can actually get it for $97 instead of $497. I am going to turn it over to Gaia to kind of help us wrap up here.
Thank you, Elaine. And we are going to use the last couple of minutes for questions and answers and to just wrap up. But before we address the questions, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to Arlene for inviting us here. Thank you, Elaine, for joining me on this today. And we hope that this has been helpful and useful to you, and that it gets you from living in survival mode to living in thrive mode. And the thing about thriving is it puts you in a really unique and special position, and it's a position of being able to help other people. So we both wish you much financial success and independence, and hope that these strategies have been simple and empowering to you. Over to you, Arlene.
Thank you so much.
Okay, ladies, wonderful. Thank you. What an awesome training. One of the things that I want to say is that when it comes to financial literacy, especially financial literacy in women, we tend to be very afraid to face realities because tend to be more of an emotional spender. We do things emotionally. And I remember in the past that I didn't want to look at my checkbook. I did not want to see how much money I had in my account in fear it was going to do something to me and I can't afford to live. And that really is not an attitude or this perspective that we should take. I like two things that you said, Elaine, and I just wanted to talk about. You said 95% of us, we operate from our subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And that's something that we need to understand, that it's in here, it's in us. So we have to do self-acclamation of reversing that negative mindset and creating some strategies to create a positive mindset, which doesn't happen like a click of a finger overnight. This is something that we have to constantly do. You also said, take 10% of your money and make it play money, and 5 to be charitable. And that's the thing. I know several people with organization, they would like everyone to invest in their organization, but when it comes to reciprocate that, it cannot be done. And that's not how it works. You know, you feel good when you can give, you feel good when you can go out with your family at least one time for the month and enjoy a meal rather than always checking off. We have to put that into our budget. So thank you for sharing so we don't have to feel guilty. Oh my God, I'm going to take this $200 and spend it. Gaia, I love that you shared these factual research numbers. You said what 90% of women who are in an abusive relationship has a connection with money. And as we can see around the globe, abuse is very relevant. To me, it's rampant more now than before. And you're right. Many times, you know, some women do not have financial freedom. They don't know how to come out of the situation they are in. Sometimes they are ashamed to admit to it. And again, if they would know how to, you know, save and learn about money management, they may not be in that situation. Thank you for sharing, ladies. I know this topic can be very detrimental to us because as women, we're afraid of it, but we really need to carry this information on. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene, for inviting us. And if you'd like to pick the name of the winner of our giveaway, and please stay on so that we can get, if you could write your name and email and phone number in the chat to Arlene, and then we will get hold of you afterwards. But thank you so much from both myself and Elaine for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I took the names of everyone that was in the training down on a piece of paper. I'm shaking it right now, and then I'm going to pick. I know one person came off, so hopefully, okay, Joann.
Yay.
Congratulations,
Congratulations,
Joann. Please
Yay!
add your name and phone number and email address in the chat.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for being on, Joann.
Okay, so let me see, I think Joann.
And again, Arlene will be reposting a link in the chat that has all the information to all the apps and websites that we mentioned. It has a link to information about Elaine's financial workshops and basically everything that we've spoken about today.
So I'm going to repost right now. I had posted earlier. Let me go back into my.
I just posted it.
Oh, you posted it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Gaia, you're quick on the fingers.
Yes.
So do you want Joanne information right now, or you will contact her once we?
If you have it, I will contact you outside. Okay.
Okay, so I have it. So once again, everyone, thank you for joining us. I do have some emails, addresses. Once we have more trainings and presentation, we would definitely invite you back. This is great information with COVID-19, which is an eye opener of how we need to create or regentify our finances. We definitely would be needing trainings like this. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.